Welcome, my friends. Come closer and let the fire warm you. The story I have for you tonight was sparked by a discovery I made with my daughter.
That's me!
Out walking among the New England woods. We were deep in the forest and came upon the bones of an old village. Nothing more than crumbling stone walls, forgotten root cellars, and a well that had long since run dry. It made us wonder how quickly a place can be forgotten, how a land can change its face in what feels like the blink of an eye, and begs the question, if you were to step away for just a moment, would you recognize the world upon your return? That brings us to our tale. We journey now to the misty Catskill Mountains and to a man who stepped away for more than just a moment. This is not a story of heroes, but of a good-natured fellow who took a nap and awoke a stranger in his own land. This is the curious tale of Rip Van Winkle. In a sleepy little village, long before a new nation was even a whispered dream, there lived a man named Rip Van Winkle. Now Rip was a good-natured fellow, a true friend to all the wives in the village, a favorite among the children, and the hero of every man who needed a hand but couldn't seem to find the time to do the work themselves.
Wait, does that mean he was lazy?
You see, Rip's problem wasn't a lack of will, but perhaps a misapplication of it. He would sit on a fence for hours discussing town business, but never quite got around to mending his own. The only person he could never please was his own wife, Dame Van Winkle. And the truth was, of all the kinds of labor in the world, the work that Rip most passionately avoided was, well, his own. His farm was the most unkempt in the entire county, and his dog, Wolf, was his constant companion, perhaps because Wolf was the only soul in the village who wasn't allowed to complain. One particularly blustery afternoon, when the tyranny of Dame Van Winkle was at its most insistent, Rip took his dog and his trusty old gun and went for a long walk up into the highest reaches of the Catskills. The higher he climbed, the more the world seemed to fade away. The sounds of the village faded, and a strange, quiet stillness fell over the woods. It was in this hush that he began to hear a peculiar sound echoing through the mountains. Not thunder, but a deep, heavy rumbling, like the crash of 100 bowling pins.
Are those mountains always like that?
Now, the Catskills are known for their echoes, for the way thunder can roll and bounce between the peaks, but this was something else entirely. He crept closer, peeking around a great mossy rock, and what he saw made his jaw drop. In a natural amphitheater of the mountainside, a group of the oddest-looking men he had ever seen were playing ninepins. They were solemn, silent, and dressed in clothing that seemed centuries out of fashion. Their beards were long, their eyes were grave, and not a single one of them said a word. The only sound was the boom and rumble of the balls, which echoed through the mountains like distant thunder. One of the men beckoned to him, and with a terrible sense of obligation, and a curious fear that his wife might appear on the mountain, Rip went to them. Silently, the strange little man directed Rip to a large wooden keg and offered him a drink. It was a potent liquor, tasting of juniper and magic, and as Rip drank, a blissful drowsiness stole over him. His head grew heavy, his eyelids drooped, and soon he lay back on a mossy bank, lulled by the distant rumble of the ninepins and the quiet hush of the mountain air. He closed his eyes, thinking he would rest for just a moment, and in that moment, the world forgot him. And so he slept. For no more than an evening, he thought, but the world, it seems, had a different plan. The sun rose and set not once, but thousands of times. The children he knew grew into men and women, the houses of the village were replaced by new ones, and the trees he climbed as a boy grew tall and strong. He slept through 20 long years, a period of time that changed the world and left him a stranger in his own land. Rip woke with a groan. his bones aching and his mind fuzzy, expecting to be home by morning light. But when he looked around, the world seemed off. The trees were taller, the rocks were in different places. He called for Wolf, but the only sound was his own voice echoing in the empty woods. Confused, he made his way down the mountain, carrying a musket so rusty it seemed to be a relic from a different age. As he entered the village, the confusion only deepened.
That's strange. Why did he get confused there? That's his home.
It's a peculiar feeling to be lost in the place you've always called home. The street was full of houses he didn't know, and people he had never seen. He tried to speak to them, to ask for directions to his own house, but they only stared at his long beard and ragged clothes. He saw a tavern that looked like his old one, but it now had a new name, and instead of the old portrait of King George, a new sign hung there, with a man in a blue coat and an unfamiliar flag above it. A crowd of children gathered behind him, whispering and pointing. He called out for his friends, but no one answered, and he was met only with the silent, strange looks of a world that had forgotten him. At first, the people of the village were unsure what to make of him. But as he told his story again and again, with all its fantastic details of the strange men and the long sleep, they began to understand. They saw not a stranger, but a living piece of their own history. He found that his wife, Dame Van Winkle, had passed away many years before, and with that final chain to his old life broken, he settled into a peaceful old age. He had slept through a revolution and found his life utterly changed without ever having to lift a hand. But in the end, he had also found a new purpose. He became the village's oldest resident, its living memory, and its most cherished storyteller. And so, in the end, he wasn't a man who had lost his life, but a man who had found a new one, telling the tale of his long, strange journey to anyone who would listen. He had finally found the one type of work he loved, sharing a story by the hearth. And so ends the tale of Rip Van Winkle, a story that reminds us that while we cannot always control the changes that come, we can always find a new place to rest our heads, a new purpose, and a new story to tell. His tale, like a favorite song, reminds us that even when the world moves on, the spirit of a good heart can always find its way home. If you enjoyed tonight's story, tend our little hearth by giving this video a like, subscribing for more tales, and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. And should you wish to help keep the fire burning, you can support Stories by the Hearth through the link in the description. Until next time, I am, as ever, your humble storyteller. May your nights be warm, your dreams filled with wonder, and your heart ever open to the magic of a good story.